Welcome to The Songwriters. I'm Ken Paulson. Our guest today may well be the coolest songwriter in the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame, with credits on Knock on Wood, In the Midnight Hour, and Sitting on the Dock of the Bay. We're honored today to talk with Steve Cropper. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
You are widely regarded as one of the best guitarists in the world. So how many halls of fame do you belong to now? Have you figured that out?
I don't have a number because when I think I've done them all, they come up with another
There's
one.
something there? Yeah.
But most of them.
Musicians Hall
and
of Fame.
I'm so proud to be in the Songwriters Hall of Fame. That's pretty cool.
And you're in great company.
Well, you know, you get in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and all that, and that's wonderful as well.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have Grammys and all those things. But you know, I cherish my BMI awards, and that's why I got in the Songwriters Hall of Fame, I guess.
When you first picked up a guitar, how old were you?
When I first started picking on one,
Yeah.
not picking, but picking at one like that, I picked up my uncle's and played it like a rubber band. I loved the sound of it. I thought it was great. I was probably about 8 or 9, something like that.
And did you have a moment you went, I'm going to do
No,
this?
I never thought I would ever actually try to play one, because that meant trying to learn music and stuff, and I just, you know. But maybe that's what got me inspired. That particular guitar, that one that did belong to my uncle, is in the Musicians Hall of Fame here in Nashville, Tennessee.
Wow.
I donated it to him.
You must have been a really good guitar player in your late teens to get recruited to play with Stax.
I look at it a different way. People know me as a guitar player because I played on so many sessions, and a lot of hits as well. A lot of hits came out of that, and it was really being on the job training kind of a thing. I took lessons, 2 or 3 lessons, and I tell on myself on this one too. And I was taken from a guy named Lynn Vernon, because one of my best friends in school studied with Lynn Vernon, and he turned out to be a very good guitar player, Charlie Freeman. Anyway, it was about my 3rd lesson, and he's looking at the songbook, and he says, here's one, and he plays this. He said, play that. And I played exactly what he played, and he said, I knew it. You wasn't reading, you played what I just played. He said, I didn't play what was on the paper. I went, oh, you caught me, okay. He said, why don't you do this? He said, why don't you get a couple of records or 3 that you really like, that you'd like to know? And then he said, I'll notate them and I'll teach you how to play them. Wow. And they were like, you know, things, ventures and that kind of stuff. And one of my favorite songs of all time is a very much simpler song than most people. Got to turn this up. Link Wray. That's all it is, 2 open strings, and you make the rest of the E chord. And I've talked to a lot of people through the years, and they said Link Wray was one of the guys they grew up with. And so I kind of started with that. I listened to people like Bo Diddley and Chuck Berry, and I knew I couldn't play as good as them, but I had a lot of fun. And Bo Diddley, I picked up the rhythm stuff. And after getting to meet him and playing with him several times, he come to me and he said, you really do know that rhythm. And so, because I play it in time like he did. And he made his whole life out of playing rhythm, not necessarily music.
Can you tell us a little bit about the birth of the MGs?
Well, Booker T and the MGs was basically a group of musicians that were hired to play sessions. They were session guys. And we were there. Jim Stewart, the owner of Stax, asked us, would we come in and play on a session for a friend of his to do a demo. And we didn't really do demos at Stax, but he wanted to cut this guy and ask us, would we come in on a Sunday? Because Saturdays and Sundays were the weekend was off. And we all agreed and said, sure, we'll do it. And the artist either didn't come in or was late or whatever. He never did show up for the session, but they said he did come to this record shop up front. But anyway, we were just wasting time playing around, and we started playing this blues thing that we play sometimes at gigs at night as a filler. It's just simple changes, and it was blues in F minor, and we were playing it, and we got through, and we were laughing and all that sort of stuff. And Jim Stewart, who was the engineer at the time, he said, hey guys, he says, come in and listen to that. And we'll go, you recorded that? He said, well, yeah, it was going pretty good. And he said, when you guys counted off, I just pushed the red button. So he asked us, he said, do you guys have anything else that you could put? And in those days, a record came out of 45 and it was an A and a B side. Right. Do you have anything you could put on the B side if we decided to put something like this out? And we thought he was just fooling us, but he wasn't. And we said no. And during that time, I looked at Booker and I said, Booker, you played me a riff about 2 weeks ago you thought would be good for a song. do you remember it? And he said, well, I don't know. Let's go down to the organ and we'll see. And he started playing Green Onions as we know it. Didn't have a title or anything. And we talked about it and said, that's a pretty good riff, let's do it. And I think about the second or third take, Jim Stewart said, Steve, you know that thing you're doing in the middle of the song? He said, why don't you put that on the intro, and when it comes to the middle, just play a solo, which is what I did. That's the Green Onions that we all know.
Wow. And so the original song that caught his ear, that was a flip? Or it was
Well,
always...
I sort of flipped it, and Scotty Moore, who was Elvis's guitar player, was also an engineer at Sun Records for Sam Phillips. And they had a lathe, and that's where we used to get our parts cut for the records. So I called Scotty on a Monday morning, and I said, can you make me what we call a dub, a demo? He said, sure, come on over. And I told him, I said, we cut this yesterday, and I think it's pretty catchy. It's probably could be a hit. And he cut it, and so a friend of mine was the drive time disc jockey on WLOK. So I took this dub down there, and I said, I want you to hear something we cut Sunday. This was a Tuesday morning on his drive time. And he put it on his other turntable, had a record playing, put it on the turntable, listened to the intro in about 4 bars, and he stops it, backs up, and puts it on again. What I didn't know, during it was playing, the phones light up. What I didn't know, he put it out on the air.
Oh, wow.
He liked it so much. And he says, what do you call this? And I said, I don't know. But the phones were lighting up. And a lot of people, if they know the history of Stax, Jim Stewart's sister, who was involved with the studio and all, she did it on the pretense that as long as she could have a record shop. So I got a job first at the record shop, not in the studio. And I get back to my gig about 9. He got off the air, I think, about 8 or whatever it was. His drive time was 6 to 8. We hung around. I go to the studio, the record shop, and Miss Action says, did you do something this morning? And I said, what are you talking about? And she said, well, the phones are lighting up. People are wanting to know what this song is that they heard on WLOK this morning on Reuben and Morrison's radio show. And I said, yeah, well, I guess you got me. I had him play this song that we cut Sunday. And she said, she called Jim, and he was at that time working at the bank. And she said, when you take your lunch break, you better come by the studio because we got something going on you need to know about. And so we told him what was going on, and he said, well, call the guys and get them in here. So we got Booker and Al and Louie and myself and in the control room and listened to it. And Jim said, well, I always thought the other one was, but the phones are lighting up on this new record that everybody wants, and we got to come up with a name for the group and a name for the record. And the way Green Onions came about was real simple. Louis Steinberg said, well, I got a title for it. We said, what's that, Louis? And he said, Onions, because that's the stinkingest music I ever heard. And I said, well, Onions is a little negative. What about Green Onions? Straight out of the garden. Everybody loves a little green onions. And I said, yeah, that's a good idea. So we called it Green Onions.
And suddenly this house
What are you
band
gonna
was
do?
you were a recording artist.
Pretty much #1 around the world
Wow.
at that time.
Wow. That's
And
amazing.
it's still going today, and I'm amazed that it still sounds as good as it does.